So you're going to create a new document and you want to select print because a magazine is a print document. A4, it's already set to portrait. We click create. So the first thing we're going to do is create rectangle frames just to place our main parts of our magazine. So for example, this is my masthead. I'm going to double click here and name it masthead. You'll see by the end of this I'll have so many layers, it's really important to have lots. This one's going to be my main image, and I've made it the size of the whole document because that's the size I want my image to be. The pink guidelines are the bleed marks, so you don't want the main things outside of that. And you can see that I've dragged the main image under the masthead on the layers panel because the higher up the list they are, the higher up the image it is. Here I'm creating my strapline box, although by the time I've created my magazine I've decided that I want to make it a skyline instead. And I've placed it on top of the main image. So that's my main boxes. I could do more, but for now I'm going to stick with that. I'm going to decide which of these images I'm going to use as my main image. So I've had a little look through and I've decided I'm going to use the Jared Leto image. So I've opened it in Photoshop. The reason I've opened it in Photoshop is because then I can edit back and forth. I'm going to use my magic wand tool to remove the background. So I've selected the background and here I'm selecting similar. I want to select everything that's about the same colour. So here you'll notice I made a mistake. I've accidentally cut out the middle of his watch and the whites of his eyes. So I've gone back, used instead my quick selection tool and taken out those bits from the selected bits so that I can just delete the background. Much better. And then I've saved that. Now I'm going to place it in. So I'm going to choose my main image box, select File, Place, and then choose my Photoshop document. And that will place him in. Now, he's not quite the right size, so I'm going to click Auto Fit and fill frame proportionally. I could select the box to the side of it, depending on whether I want to fit the whole thing, whether I want to fit it in height-wise. I want to fit it height-wise. So this is about right for me. And because I have Auto Fit selected, if I change the size of the box, it will automatically say change the size of the picture. But because of the edging of the picture and where it's cut off, I'm gonna keep him this size, because it works for what I'm creating here. I'm going to shift him down a bit. You can see he's moving off of the bottom of the page, but that doesn't matter because in InDesign you can use things around your page, around your artboard. So by reducing it down, moving him down, it doesn't really matter. So now I'm going to worry about my masthead. So I'm going to choose a font from dafont.com. There's loads and loads of different fonts on here, so spend some time looking for the sort of things you want. So I've already decided that I'm going to use one of the retro fonts, and I've scrolled down and I've decided actually I quite like the font Urban. In fact, I quite like the name Urban. So I click download and it will download the font as a zipped file. When you double click on it and open the folder, you'll see either a TTF or an OTF file. They're font files. You double click it and click Install Font on this window that will pop up. Now, if you get this box, you tick to say, yeah, that's fine, and install it, and now you'll have that font ready to use. So I click T for text and into my masthead box, and I'm typing in my masthead. I've called mine Urban because I quite like the name. I'm going to make it bigger. I'm going to go for 150. Yeah, I think that's probably about right. And then I'm going to highlight it. Oh, I've also centered it there. I'm going to highlight it and change it to that font I've just downloaded, Urban. Now, mastheads often fill the whole bleed space, so I'm going to First of all, change the colour here because I quite like this blue. Just closing that window there. And I'm going to want the masthead to be behind his head, but for now I'm going to leave it on top so I can edit it. So this button here changes how wide the letters are. So I'm now extending it so it's about the width I want. But I think it looks a bit squished, so I'm going to use this one to make it taller. Now, I could have just made the font bigger, but I like to do it this way because that means I've got more control over the micro adjustments. And I'm going to drag it underneath my main image, and there, I've got my masthead where I need it. So I'm going to draw colour in the background now. I've used my rectangle tool to draw a rectangle, and here's where I'm going to select the colours. Now, I don't really want any of these colours. I want something similar. I'm just showing back black for now to show you. Now again, I've drawn outside the document, but if you click off everything and press your W, it will just give you a print preview like I just did. And I'm going to name it background because otherwise I'm going to start getting confused. Now, I don't like it black, so I'm going to click on it, and then here I'm going to click New Swatch. And I'm going to change my colour. Now I'm going to go for a nice light grey because I always think that looks quite classy. I'm going to hopefully press my W again. Yep, I do. And there we go. So that's what my magazine looks like so far. I know I've gone a bit outside into my artboard, and you could shift that rectangle to be the same size as the page. I haven't bothered. Then I need to have a barcode. I haven't previously downloaded one. And in fact, I'm going to search for PNG. Because a PNG file is one that doesn't have a background. So it, in between the lines will be see-through. And I've copied and pasted it in. Now, here I try this out. I try and make it slightly different sizes, see if it fits. But actually, at this point, I decide I'm not a big fan of the barcode with a white background. Even though I searched for PNG, I didn't actually choose a PNG file. That does look fine. I've decided I want to look for a different one, so I've deleted it and I've gone back to my search. I'm going to have a little click around, have a look to see what files I want. Oh, Naughty Dixon, can't get onto that site. And in the end, I decided to choose this one. And actually I'm going to save the image to make sure it is a PNG, Portable Network Graphic File. And then I'm going to drag and drop it. Now it's downloaded. Now it's massive. So I've clicked my auto fit, so when I make the box smaller it fits into my box. Still massive. Takes me a little while to get to a valid size that I want. Probably going to need it a bit smaller than that. Which indeed I'm doing now. And I like that. But I'm not so fond of it in black. So I'm going to right click and put Edit with Photoshop. And it'll open it in Photoshop. And all I'm going to do here is invert the colours. So I'm going to go Image Adjustments, Invert, which will just turn it white. And you'll notice then, once I save it and go back to InDesign, because the document's linked, it'll immediately change it. Pretty cool, huh? So this is my magazine so far. Now I need to start thinking about my strapline and my cover lines. So I'm going to draw some boxes for my cover lines. And inspired by Jared Leto's watch, I'm going to write a cover line about new hip watches that someone might want to buy. So this is hilarious. Keeping time, 100. Must have watches. So I'm going to make it bigger. Now, I'm not a massive fan of this serif font, so I've decided I'm making the box a bit bigger so all the text fits in. And I've decided I don't really like this font. I want must have to be on a different line. And I'm going to change to a different font. Now, there are loads of already installed fonts. Usually when I'm designing, I'll go back to DaFont and find something I really like. But actually, I'm just going to go with an old favourite here. So I'm going to use Geneva. So this is a sans serif font. It's fairly clean and inoffensive. In hindsight, I probably would use a slightly different font. And I'm trying different colours within my colour palette. I tried the same blue as my masthead, I'm not sure. Actually, I think the white stands out a bit better. I thought about making Keeping Time bold, but actually Geneva doesn't have a bold form. So I decided, actually I'm going to keep that the same. And I'm going to use a yellow. I want a similar yellow actually to his jumper. So rather than doing it this way, I'm going to go to colour and then I'm going to double click on the colour of the text. Now I thought I could do it this way, I couldn't. What you need to do is you double click on the T there, yep that's it, and drag the eyedropper to the colour I want. So that's the same colour as his jumper, there we go, and I'm going to make it bigger. Now you can type it in, 100, I think I went a bit too excessive here, yeah that's way too big. So I decide I'm going to go a bit smaller. 75. Yeah, that'll do. Now, because that's such a big font, I've got a massive gap between Keeping Time and 100. I don't like the positioning yet, but I'm going to fix that in a moment. And actually, I've decided the easiest way to do it would be to put it in a different text box. And then delete that top bit. I've centered the text, I'm double clicking on the bottom corner, and now I've got this as a cover line. Now you'll see that I'm currently not in my preview mode. I'm trying to line up the text to the edge of the bleed because I don't want to go too close to the edge. So I've tried putting Keeping Time as well, but I decide actually I don't need that. So in a moment you'll see I decide to take it out. And really that's a key part of designing. That I end up going back and forth when I'm creating magazines or creating any design tool. You can see I play around just by nudging cover lines around, going back to my preview mode. I know that this is slightly outside the bleed. I tend to use my eye really. I'm trying to keep it within the bleed. So I've made the 100 a bit smaller. Go back to my preview mode possibly. I go back and forth between my planning and my preview to see how it looks. So I'm going to create a second cover line here. Decided I'm going to do my main cover line and use the name of the artist, Jared Leto. I realise I've typed it wrong. I'm going to make it bigger than that. Make it white to stand out against his jacket because I've decided I'm going to put the cover line on him because then it works as anchorage text because it then identifies who this person is. I right justify it because actually his image is kind of right justified. I double click on the corner so that the text box shrinks to the size that I want it, and I'm going to put a subheading underneath on life, love and looks. And I'm going to make that white as well. Now you don't want to use too many different fonts, so I'm sticking to Geneva, which is the one I used before, and all the ones I've used recently are at the top. So there we go, Geneva. Going to make it a bit bigger. There we go. I preview and I think, well actually, the Jared and the Leto are a little bit far apart. So what I'm going to do is nudge things around, have a think about how it looks. I've decided I like that works better having that closer. And I have a little think about it. Then I decide that actually I'm going to put my strap line instead at the top. I typed my strap line because I decided to type it before I moved it. Clothes, style, culture, news and technology. Now you'll see throughout this I'm only using those two fonts. Urban and Geneva, because if you've got too many fonts, then it ends up looking like a bit of a mishmash. And magazines tend to have that brand identity of just having, you know, house fonts. So I've used my Urban. At the moment I've got it in black. I'm going to look and see how it looks. I'm going to centre it. And actually, I'm going to bump it down so that it's closer to the masthead. And just nudging it. I quite like it in the white, so I change it over. Yeah, pretty happy with that. Looking at it in hindsight, I think I would have moved the skyline over slightly so that the beginning of clothes and the end of technology lined up with the word urban. I'm going to add other conventions now. The price, again using Geneva. I've tried it under there. I think that's okay. I'm going to do another one now for the edition. So I've written August. I'm going to make that a bit bigger. And I'm rotating it because I'm going to line it up against the N of urban. And you can see that InDesign does this nice helpful degree bit. So again, I faff around for a bit with exactly where I'm going to put it. Do I want to line it up at the top? I think that's too close to the skyline. In the middle, doesn't look quite right. See, lined up with the bottom, I quite like. But the problem I've got there now, I decide to add 2018. The problem I've got there now is that it's too close to the price. And I think, well, actually, what can I do with that? I know. I'm going to turn it white and put it by the barcode because that's another place that sometimes this the price is. And again, I've got my angle so I can work out it's exactly 90 degrees. I'm going to move it and nudge it where I want it. I'm using my arrow keys rather than using my mouse because you can nudge it like that. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. So this is where I decide to go back and change the distance between the texts. And I do that underneath where the text size is, that's the gap size. So I've reduced that so that the Leto is close to the Jared. So now that I can move it slightly more into the green of his jacket. And yeah, I'm much happier with that positioning, and I think that anchors the image nicely. So because my main image is so big, I haven't got lots of space for lots of cover lines, but I'm going to add some more in. So I've got a bit of space there and a bit of space there, but maybe I'm going to add in a puff. So like my rectangular tool, if I click and hold, it will give me a circle tool. So I'm going to do a circle there, but I'm going to, again, I want the colour to be similar to the green in his jacket. So, like last time, I'm going to go into colour. I'm going to double click on the colour box and drag my thing until I've got the colour that I want. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. But it actually is quite dark. So I think I'm going to lighten that up a bit. So I'm in a similar palette. The only thing I'm changing is how dark it is. So colour-wise, it still works. I try playing around with the cyan, magenta, yellow, but I decide actually I'm going to go back to where I was. So the puff works, but I want it to stand out more from the background. So now I'm going to think about using a stroke. A stroke is a line around the outside, and I want it to be a bit more fancy, so I'm going to choose one of my fancy stroke types, and I'm going to make it the same colour as the yellow in his jumper. So I'm going to do that in exactly the same way. You can see my little faffing around. I'm going to make it a basic yellow for now and then choose the yellow I want. I'm going to increase the width of the stroke. So you can see how I've got the colour tying together, and actually the word urban stands out because it's quite a different colour. So I play around with different places to put my puff, but actually I quite like it in the space that I've got to the left hand side of his head. I wonder whether I can put the 100 must-have watches on top of it and resize it, but I end up thinking actually that's probably not the way to do it. So I separate those cover lines again, and I'm undoing this because I thought that was probably a quicker way to do it. So I'm going to make it a bit bigger and then include some text. So I'm going to draw a text box on top of my puff and then put in my text. So I'm going to write NYC Fashion Week. And then I think, well, actually I'm going to put them on separate lines. And then I'm going to highlight it and centre it because I think centering looks quite good on circular puffs. Again, I'm going to use, I'm going to try my different fonts. Tried Urban, I quite like my Urban font. So I'm going to use that, make it bigger. Too big for my text box. Again, I'm going to double click on my corner because that will make the text box the right size. Yeah, actually I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm going to put that cover line on the other side for now. It's just inside the bleed. I'm kind of happy with where it is, but I'll come back to that. You can see that I'm trying it out in lots of different places. Does it work over his hand? Do I think I can fit them both on the same side? I probably could have. I've tried changing the size of the fonts to make that fit in. Wondering whether I can fit it over his hair. So this roughly is where I end up putting it. Again, I'm looking at my bleed line, thinking, well, I probably need to move that 100 in a bit. So I nudge it in with my arrow keys. I don't mind it over his hair there. So I'm going to go back to my NYC Fashion Week and play around with that. Now, you can see I've stopped labelling my layers, and it's getting quite busy. So actually, I'm going to make a new coloured layer and call that puff. And I'm going to drag and drop all my puff stuff in there so that I can select it in one go and move it. So then in that same layer, I'm going to create some, like a page reference underneath. Yeah, here we go. Highlights, page, oh, highlights inside, no, highlights, page 54. Going back to my chosen font, making it a bit bigger so it's legible. Change the font colour to white, because white text is a part of the brand identity for my magazine. And I'm nudging it to where I want it. And this is the point where I go into my preview mode and think, well, what am I missing? So actually I thought, well, I think I'm missing page references on my other cover line. So I'm going to use that. And actually I don't want to go to white. I think, well, actually I'm going to reuse the blue I've got in my masthead so that it fits elsewhere. And again, I need to change it to my chosen font. Make it just that little bit close to that top cover line. And then I look at it and think, well, actually, I think maybe it's all a bit too far up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close my bottom layer so I can select them. And I'm clicking in the little boxes here and then pressing Command so that I can select them both in one go. Now it's important that you click on the boxes and you've got them all lit up so that I can move them all in one go. And I'm moving it down. Now, you can now see that the barcode is outside the bleed line. But I'm happier with that positioning, having the masthead and the cover line, the skyline further down. I'm going to go back into my preview mode, and actually I'm happier with that. So after this, I continued playing around a bit more, and we get to the point where we have our final version. I decided to put all my cover lines in the same colour layer, so I moved that in there, and that's your tutorial.